So the ceasefire deal, the so-called deal with Hamas, is pretty much done. Some technically it's not finalized yet. People are talking, officially it's supposed to be only confirmed on Thursday. There are a few details that are finalized yet. Uh, but I have a feeling the details are not going to be that Israel will take over and occupy Gaza for the foreseeable future. Hamas will be completely disillusioned. I have a feeling that it won't be anything like that. And with that, similar to what I've said on the daily objective, the sort of the amount of almost dread or sort of not knowing even how to feel when something like this happens reminds me of I'll just mention a quick story. We had when we had last presidential elections in Slovakia. I was in the electoral commission, and we were watching the results while they were coming out, and pretty quickly, within like 20 minutes or so, it was pretty clear who was going to win. Even with the 10% of the votes counted, basically because of the ratio, we sort of knew what's going to happen. And you know, when that happens, you sort of have this sort of weird feeling where, what you did hasn't really affected, you know, the results. It was your one vote. And unless you have like a big platform, you probably haven't changed mind of many people. Yet, you feel this sort of like sense of, yeah, not really knowing how to feel. And I know many people that are watching this probably feel the same feeling. So I think it's good to sort of go over this, talk about it, and see basically how to really almost like process such an information. So this will be sort of there is not a defined sort of what we're going to talk about this episode. I have a few things basically written as well as covering some of the news, but a big part of it is just going to be, yeah, us talking about how to even sort of think about it. Joining me today are Alejandro and James Valiant. Welcome to the reality show. I mean, Alejandro, when did you first sort of knew because for a few days we sort of knew this deal is happening, but and it was at different points we had different sort of like percentage of how basically confirmed we are, and now we are pretty much at 99.9% or so. Uh, but yeah, when did you sort of first sort of realize like, oh, this is it?
For me, I think it was Monday. Um, I don't remember exactly what triggered me that this was a made deal, but certainly when I heard it, I knew that this wasn't going to be something that was going to be looking pretty. Um, I mean, take it in the context of a couple of months ago, we were talking about maybe the US and the UAE dividing themselves Gaza or taking some plans, some occupation plans. Uh, I mean, the details of this deal haven't been fully released, but my impression is that that won't definitely be the case. My impression on Monday was pretty much settled. I think this agreement will be signed with the blood of Israeli citizens, although it will be paid on credit. You won't be seeing it today. You won't be seeing it tomorrow. Maybe you won't see it in a few months or years, but definitely this will cost lots of lives and maybe not even Israelis. The precedent that you're living with this is so disastrous, so bad, especially with the advancements that Israel had made, um, that very few things, very few positive things can come out of this.
Yeah, and we'll go more in some people in the chat are talking, are Israelis behind the deal? Do they support it? Because this could be just pressure from Biden and Trump. And we'll definitely discuss also that. And also many people are saying, well, maybe Israel will break the deal at some point. So, why be so pessimistic? But so we'll cover all that. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says only 38 hostages. Uh, a win for evil. He sort of has it written so it can go through the algorithm, so it was hard to read. Uh, y- yeah. I mean, James, and also we have a super chat from Gail. Thank you so much. James, what? Um, yeah, I mean, when did you get that sort of confirmation in you that this is really going through? And yeah, what do you think?
I was quite busy this weekend with a variety of things, including an out-of-town friend visiting and so forth. So I was kind of out of it. So I have to say, I think that it was Monday. It was like Monday morning and it was what really got me, and how eloquent you were, Alejandro, in the way you put that. Very, very well put. We will pay for it, and we don't see the. Once I heard Trump so pressuring that he was really pressuring everybody, pressuring Netanyahu, wanting the deal. Trump wasn't when he said they'll will unleash hell and all hell will. He wasn't planning some military exercise. What he was doing was pressuring so that he could make a deal with the devil. And as Alejandro points out, it may not be next week or next year or even 2 years, and it may not even be what we call Hamas doing it, but civilization will pay dearly a price for this. Trump, when I heard how serious he was, that's when my stomach just sank, because I thought that, well, I didn't think he was ever principled about it, but I thought that his own image of being tough on the issue would have carried him through to do something better, some real serious kinetic action against Iran and the Houthis, which I was expecting. My hopes for that are now pretty much dashed because he is willing to make a deal with anybody. He'll make a deal with the Ayatollah. And what will that mean? Will that mean a nuclear Iran very soon? If he's as principled as he's been so far, pressuring everyone to take a deal, then I have no confidence that he wouldn't cut a deal with Satan himself for Satan to keep, nuclear weapons. So I am disheartened, and I've been disheartened since Monday about this, and my feelings have gotten worse and worse since then. No, Trump, if he's going to back up any of the tough talk, has a lot to make up for now. But in principle, he's already thrown in the towel. So, what kind of confidence do we have that he would ever take on evil in an appropriate way? What he's doing, as I said in the Daily Objective, is guaranteeing the continued existence of Hamas. He's morally sanctioning it. He's releasing a bunch of Hamas terrorists back out into the wild and proving that he's willing to negotiate with anybody over anything. The worst kind of fears I had about Trump are being realized.
Yeah, and Alejandro mentioned that how differently we were talking about this a few months ago. I mean, whenever Israel struck Iran, Israel destroyed Hezbollah, or almost destroyed Hezbollah. Unfortunately, Israel, Assad's regime has fallen. We had so many. In a sense, 2024 was one of the I think Nikos, that was the point of Nikos, that 2024 was the best year since 89, basically since the fall of communism, because of the amount of damage that was done to the terrorist, basically terrorist axis, or the axis of evil. And the fact, while I was researching everything, while I was reading the stories, I saw the headline saying this. Hamas officials said that the group's leader, Khalil al-Hayya, has delivered approval of the ceasefire agreement to mediators in Doha. Al Jazeera, Arabic, and Sky News are reporting. And when I read this, I saw the name Khalil al-Hayya, and I haven't seen that name before. It's because we killed so many leaders of Hamas. I did one episode when it came to Hezbollah with James. We killed so many leaders of Hezbollah that I didn't even care to research who is the current leader, because we are killing them so fast. We are actually killing terrorists, actually killing long-time terrorists. I mean, Nasrallah has been, you know, at the top of the terrorist list for decades at the very least.
30
Y-
years.
yeah, Yahya Sinwar in the same way, Ismail Haniyeh also, and now it's just some random guy, or maybe not random. He is probably high ranking in Hamas before, but sort of this, someone we haven't heard much before, and yeah, he can accept the deal as anybody else. He is the representative of Hamas, and we can, you know, just because we killed some of the leaders, if we could have imagined during World War II, we killed, if we killed Hitler, we killed, whatever other leaders, and then we made a deal with some of the Nazis and basically allowed the Nazi regime to continue existing. And because this is what is happening. We are making a deal with Hamas for their continued existence. I've seen some stories about apparently the Palestinian Authority doesn't like any future in which Palestinian Authority isn't the one that is going to control Gaza. And so I don't know what specifics are the deal if really PA is being left out of this. Um, but yeah, the idea that even PA would be allowed to take it is crazy, let alone that Hamas would be allowed to continue existing. I mean, Alejandro, what do you think is behind this? How can this happen in a sense? How can we go from the pager attack, from attacking the ports of the Houthis, from Assad's regime falling to making a deal with Hamas?
Well, there are so many things to say, but maybe to give you the prelude to the answer is altruism. Now, the way that several news sources are treating this is, hey, this is a victory for Israel. They were seeking for the return of the hostages, and now they're having it. That certainly is the point of view of the BBC, and they're saying, hey, this is happening because Trump was very tough um, in his rhetoric against Hamas. When in reality, the way that we're seeing this is the opposite. That this is Trump pressuring Israelis to come up with the resolution. However, I think one of the interesting assertions of Ayn Rand about the nature of altruism is surrendering a good for something that is less valuable or a non-value. And here, everything is lose, 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 lose. And in my view, I think I haven't commented this in my in the reality shows interventions I've had. I sadly and tragically, I even think that it will be a lose for several hostages. Being kidnapped for years, for more than a year, in probably the most disastrous conditions, is maybe worse than death. I grew up in a country where kidnapping was something relatively common, and ever since I was a child, I knew that if I ever encounter these conditions, I would be very more much likely prefer to be dead than to come back. The psychological consequences of that are so disastrous, so difficult to overcome. That I think even returning them home um, is a losing situation. I hope not. But in all cases, this is surrendering to Hamas and receiving nothing in return.
Yeah, well, first something because I'm just quickly trying to I'll check it later. But basically, when it reminds me of one of the stories from around October 7 on afterwards. I think there was a dad who was scared for his daughter or for his child, and when he heard that they were killed, uh, he was actually happy because it meant that they were not kidnapped. And yeah, and the idea that um yeah, I mean something like this, like I can understand that. I mean, similar to what you said, when you grew up, it is absolutely understood, like the conditions that the hostages were kept in. I mean, few days ago we did an episode on the worst Israeli jail or something, where the terrorists from October 7 are being held, and they still get food, they still get basically they can take care of their hygiene, they still get 1 hour of exercise every day. And that's simply not something that the hostages are given. We've heard that from the hostages themselves, who spoke out after they were rescued. Um, and yeah, the fact that after all this, the fact that we know what Hamas is, we know what Hamas has been doing, we know, uh, and not just Hamas, the Palestinians themselves. In many cases, Palestinians have been holding the hostages. They have been and not standing up to Hamas, not doing anything about Hamas, actively helping Hamas in many ways. And after all that, Razi already gave me the topic for tomorrow's show. We'll talk about the sacrifice that has been made by the soldiers, by the IDF soldiers, both the ones that died on October 7 and also the ones that died during the operations, mainly taken to protect Palestinians, being careful, being sort of not go, sort of yeah basically doing the ground operation, because ground operations are costly to human life on your side, because you have to have actual soldiers on their feet, on the ground. It's much different than just bombing from the up top, and this was done in favor of Palestinians, in favor of preserving their lives, that have been like doing all that. And again, after all that, we just make a deal. And it feels like now that's it for 20 more years, or for decades now. It's gonna be the same thing. We've talked about, or I mentioned, how much we destroyed Hezbollah. Assad's regime has fallen, but now in the last days we have, information coming out about, apparently it looks like Erdogan is pressuring Israel to leave, sort of leave the Syrian parts they've invaded. So if Erdogan's sort of part of Syria takes over Syria, then we just have a different sort of dictatorship in Syria. Hezbollah has survived and might recover. Now it looks like Hamas might recover. The Houthis are not gone. Iran is not gone. So what was it for? I mean, James, we've been
What,
covering this since October 7, and it's like,
what,
yeah, what was this for?
what was it for? Israel in taking on Hezbollah and Hamas, um, and to some extent, even the Houthis. I mean, they really had some good strikes there. But think of all the lives lost of IDF soldiers. Think of the attacks from Lebanon, where those school children were killed on a football field. How much Israel has paid a price to fight back on terrorism. All of that for what? For what? So that we can guarantee the continued existence of Hamas and Hezbollah? 100,000 or more Israelis displaced, if you count both south and north. And for what? So Israel pays this huge price to get nothing but the continued existence of Hamas, the rewarding of Hamas. Now, of course, we needed some kind of international, if we could have done something. I mean, Israel had every right to occupy all of Gaza right now and clean it out. But if we could have had some kind of international occupation of Gaza, but no, no, no. Hamas is going to be back in power. The border with Egypt will be unprotected. If Iran isn't taken out, of course, more supplies will come in. So precisely, for what? For what did Israelis die? Civilian and military. For what did even Americans die in the course of this? No, this is a total betrayal of civilization. And Alejandro names it so perfectly. It is the very definition of sacrifice, the giving up of something, a greater value for a lesser value. Now, when I put it like that, I do not mean to disparage the lives of those hostages, but Alejandro makes a really, really important point. First, I just don't even know how many are still alive, but I also know that many of them were tortured, raped, kept as slaves. Many of them kept underground without any fresh air or sunshine in a crammed little place for how long? Over a year, for 15 months now. And what? We're just going to allow all these monsters back into the wild to what? Kill, rape, take more hostages, more atrocities against women and children? No. For what did those Israeli soldiers die? For what have these Israeli civilians been displaced and some of them killed? For what did all of this for the last 15 months happened for? So we could reward them, so we could encourage them, sanction them, make sure they have a continued existence, and not even have guarantees that it won't reconstitute in Gaza? That is the definition of sacrifice. This is total altruism. Um, it's
Yeah,
despicable.
yeah, and Alejandro mentioned about how this is viewed as an Israeli win, and it is really. And I made this point many times. Basically, people look at this as a game, as some sort of we're just playing like a I don't know what even kind of game, but basically, well, Israel has killed more of their side. It has destroyed more of their side, so they have won. But the thing is, when you and there is no other way to like say it. When you have like cockroaches in your in your basement, you don't win against them when you like get rid of them. You just go back to neutral. When you have a terrorist regime on your border, when you have like people who have no other reason almost for existing than trying to kill you, trying to get rid of you. By you being able to defend yourself, by you being able to destroy them, destroy that regime, destroy that sort of culture, you don't win. You just return to the default so you can prosper for yourself. I mean,
And that is what has kept this a perpetual war. Precisely the values, attitudes, perspective that we see here from all sides now. America, and if Netanyahu tries to sell this to his cabinet, that we're seeing it now from all sides. That is the added. Oh, this was the win. It's in a different context when Biden said, "Don't attack Iran back after their first attack on Israel. Take the win." It's that is this take the win, and their definition of a win, which in fact my brother Alejandro there has correctly said is a lose lose, is a sacrifice situation. That's no win. That's surrender. That's total capitulation and surrender. And so we're not, no one's taking a win here. This is a loss for civilization. This is a loss against the most savage, vile enemies of civilization are getting they're the ones getting the big win here. When, okay, so we kill a bunch of them and we count the numbers of them. We kill the leaders. Okay. We take out their infrastructure. Okay. Okay. But just on the verge of them, what you do, that's the moment where you keep pushing them and push them entirely off the cliff. It's not the moment when you say, "Oh no, now that we've seen the light of humanitarian compassion, we'll do anything to get these hostages back, including releasing terrorists, sanctioning Hamas, and not making sure that Hamas does not reconstitute in Gaza." That and only that could have been close to a win, ladies and gentlemen. This is taking the loss for nothing. For
yeah.
nothing.
I mean, Alejandro, going to you, that's why I really dislike, talking about, yeah, sort of winning when it comes to war. You don't get any value. America, when they destroyed Japan, they didn't get any value. They just destroyed a regime that was actively trying to harm them, trying to, harm the values that they are actively pursuing. That's not something. And in the same way, Israel is not benefiting in any way. The amount of money that could have been used for productive activity that instead has to be used to either, defend yourself from primitive rockets or use it for offense to basically get rid of the regime that is actively trying to destroy you. Yeah, what do you think? What is behind this sort of
Well,
mentality of,
well, I do think that uh, the West, and especially the US and the allied countries, gained some value when they defeated Nazi Germany and Japan. The value of being at peace, of not having enemies. It's a negative connotation. It has a negative connotation, the avoidance of threats. But in a certain sense, it's more of a value that what Russia takes when it invades a country like Georgia just to sack it, or to Ukraine just to make a bloody subway with marble. Um, but what this thing is at stake is one of the core things that differentiates a civilized country from a non-civilized, aside of the political nature of things, which the political principle is the grasp and recognition of rights. But morally, and I think one of the recognitions is the notion that justice is something desirable, something that one should act upon, and something that should drive decisions and 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 the good and evil of every individual. Uh, it's very difficult for people living in civilized or semi-civilized countries to grasp that in other societies, the notion of justice is not only not regarded, but also resented and hated whenever it's invoked. Um, here what you have is a terrible act of injustice. And remember that justice means giving to people, to individuals, what they deserve. Here in Israelis deserve a peaceful, rights respecting region, and Palestinians deserve what their governors have led them to deserve, given the actions of October the 7th. However, this sacrifice, this surrendering, is a complete breach of evil, of justice. And the consequence of not behaving like a civilized country is to suffer the same consequences that non-civilized countries have.
Yeah, it's an emotional approach. It's a sacrificial approach. You're not thinking of justice and rights in principle terms. Alejandro again nails it precisely. We don't conceptually think of rights and justice. Those are just, vague float. Or how did Jeremy Bentham put rights? Nonsense on stilts, right? We think of these things as supernatural entities when they're in fact conceptual realities that are being betrayed right here. And it'll happen when Trump cuts a deal with Putin that'll reward them with territory that used to belong to Ukraine, and he'll cut a deal there. He'll cut a deal with anyone, and that is a betrayal of justice itself. It is a betrayal of, I know this is alien perhaps to Trump's mentality, of the principle involved. But once you sacrifice that principle, once you've sacrificed that principle, do not be surprised. In fact, expect now a torrent of injustice at some point to come back at you. Of course, they resent justice. Evildoers must and inherently resent justice. And when someone says, hey, we need to make sure Hamas cannot reconstitute, we need to make sure that Gaza is no longer a hotbed for murderous hatred. I mean, look at what Israel has just gone through over the last 15 months. No, they're not getting justice. Civilization isn't getting justice. What civilization will get is more violence and terrorism, hostage taking. There was a movie made in America. Glenn Ford, many years ago, made a movie called Hostage. And Mel Gibson, and I don't approve of Mel Gibson's philosophy in general, made a remake of that, Hostage. A wealthy businessman's son is taken hostage. And of course, everyone is expecting him to pay the ransom. Rather than pay the ransom, he makes a public statement. No, I'm not going to pay your ransom. If my kid gets hurt, you guys will all die. Full stop. If you don't release him now, I'm going to be hunting you all down and kill you to a man. And of course, that leads to a much better outcome because the bad guys then turn on each other. They're in a position where they're not secure for a second. For a second. Now, I know it takes kind of a superhuman conceptual mentality, sort of a really clear understanding of what justice and safety means for a father, especially to take the position. A wealthy man, his son is kidnapped. It would be. I can understand them wanting to pay the price, but what you're doing is you're sanctioning the evil. You're rewarding it. You're sending them exactly what they wanted, that big bag of money. So what have you done? You've encouraged hostage taking. Have you made your kids safe in the future? No, you have continued the danger to your child. You're not protecting your child, in effect. Now, I'm not going to judge every hostage situation out of context, but in this one, where it's ongoing war, where women were raped and mutilated, and babies were taken and killed, and even children and babies were taken hostage? No, all you're doing is guaranteeing more of that behavior.
Yeah. So
Romano got it exactly right, Alejandro. You're being very eloquent today. You nailed it.
So Trump has put a post on his Truth Social. I think we should go through it. So it's about 3 paragraphs. It starts with this epic ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November, as it signaled to the entire world that my administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies. I'm thrilled American and Israeli hostages will be returned home to be reunited with their families and loved ones. With this deal in place, my national security team, through the efforts of Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff, will continue to work closely with Israel and our allies to make sure Gaza never again becomes a terrorist safe haven. We will continue promoting peace through strength throughout the region as we rebuild the momentum of the ceasefire to further expand the historic Abraham Accords. This is only the beginning of great things to come for America and indeed the world. We have achieved so much without even being in the White House. Just imagine all of the wonderful things that will happen when I return to the White House and my administration is fully confirmed so they can secure more victories for the United States. And
Just imagine the deal I can cut with Putin. Just imagine the deal I can cut with the dictators in North Korea. Just imagine the deal I can cut with the Ayatollah in Tehran. Yeah, I can imagine it now, Mr. Trump. Now that you've given me the concrete reality of what you mean by peace through strength, you have almost guaranteed that more Israelis and Americans will be taken hostage and tortured. I, forgive my emotion, but that is truly despicable. Uh, uh, I have no worse evaluation I could give to it because he has simply rewarded that behavior, and he has actually encouraged more Israeli and American hostages to be taken in future rather than protect them, which is what his responsibility is as president of the United States.
yeah, and he said Gaza will never becomes a terrorist safe haven. And my biggest problem with Trump always has been the fact that he has no policies. He has no sort of stated policies that he's gonna do. And in a similar way, here he says Gaza is never gonna become a terrorist safe haven. How are you gonna make sure of that? What is the policy you are going to pursue to make sure that happens? Because so far, you've supported a deal with Hamas, you support the continued existence with Hamas. By what, how will you, we recently, for those who don't know, it looks like Andrew Tate is making a political party in the United Kingdom and will try to run for prime minister. And, he actually did like a, mm, like a sort of like things he's gonna pursue. And it's all things like basically it's just gonna be better. Like no policies, no specific things that he's gonna do. It's gonna be better. And this is sort of similar way. Like, yeah, it's gonna be better. Trust me. You don't have to. I don't have to give you any policies. I don't have to. I won't give you anything you can judge me by later. I'm just gonna say it's gonna be better. And if it's different than what I thought it was gonna be, I'll just change my mind. I just say, well, no, actually, this is better. Um, so yeah, I mean, he's gonna have 4 years. Hamas will not rebuild in 4 years, and most likely we won't see another October 7th like attack during his administration. But Hamas has grown during his administration. As I said, Hamas was preparing as I've said, the Great March of Return happened under his administration. Uh, so again, he might say good things. He is viewed as the pro-Israeli guy, but what is he actually uh, doing?
Well, he won't fund UNRWA probably. I mean, he did pull the funding of UNRWA.
Well,
He
Israel
will,
banned UNRWA, so that isn't even an issue anymore.
right, but well, that's true. They
Well, yeah,
take
yeah, but originally,
but you see, he won't even I mean, you can imagine that Biden would be doing the exact, or Kamala Harris would be pressuring Israel to allow UNRWA to do it and continue to fund with, all those dollars from America. We're going to be funding the UN organization that teaches violence and racist hatred. So, I mean, will we still be able to say, well, it could have been worse under Harris? Well, that's not the standard, and that's a pretty low damn bar to have to meet. No, unless we really do have some kind of occupation of Gaza, some kind of breaking of the corridor between that allows Egypt funds and weapons from Iran to continue to come into Gaza. All you're doing, Mr. Trump, is perpetuating this. We're not. You haven't advanced the ball. All you've done, and as you point out, it probably won't. Hamas won't reconstitute well enough to do another attack, while he's president in the next few years. But this is his last term. It'll be someone else's problem, not his political problem, which is the main thing that he's been pressuring them for, as we've said. No, this is a betrayal of civilization and security. But of course, Mr. Trump probably doesn't have two principles to his name to rub together. So this is what happens when you don't have principles, ladies and gentlemen. You talk tough, but you don't have a conceptual understanding of what justice and rights really require, what safety and security of civilization requires in this context. No, like I say, I can keep my fingers crossed that he'll go after the Houthis and open up the full trade in the Suez Canal again. I can hope that he'll destroy Iran's nuclear program, but right now it's just a hope. Why would he, engage in that kind of stuff, and ruffle feathers and upset the horses? Why would he do that? He wants to make a deal with everybody. I'm so disheartened by this that I have lost any confidence at things even being much marginally better under Trump in terms of foreign policy. Honestly, it's that bad.
We have a few super chats. First, thank you, Gail, for a super chat. Thank you, Christian, for a super chat. He says, maybe the idea is to concentrate on the head Iran. Once the head is gone, they think they can contain Hamas in Gaza. Back to the old mowing the lawn tactic, but now harsher and with Iranian Guard Corps gone, or Islamic Republic of Iran.
Wouldn't it be lovely if we took out the government of Iran? You want to lay odds on whether Trump will take out have regime change in Tehran or not? I'm not sanguine on that point at all.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest problem with that is like those two things don't go against each other, right? There is no like, it's not like an exclusionary path. Either we can take out Hamas or we can take out Iran. Like those things actually go together. I mean, imagine if during World War II we were like, well, we can take out the Nazis and Japan, but let's just take out Nazis and make a peace with Japan. And it's like, well, we can do both, actually. We
Right.
don't have to like.
Ayn Rand's position about Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia. We both Stalin and Hitler were monsters. We can't ally with one to get the other. Let them fight it out, but we're not going to make an alliance with one or the other to get the other. That was her position in the years preceding World War II. And when you look at what happened after World War II, she was vindicated. A third of the world went into slavery for decades.
And this is even different because Hamas is not fighting Iran. Hamas is supported by Iran. Like by destroying Hamas, by destroying all Iranian proxies, you are also actively fighting against Iran because they get their weapons from Iran, they get their support from Iran. Similar to when we support Ukraine and we fight Russia, we are also kind of fighting Iran since Russia and Iran are allies. Basically, with all these dictatorships, by fighting one of them, in many ways you are fighting one of them. And by not wanting or sort of denying fighting one of them or sort of not wanting fight of them, you are actually allowing the other ones to thrive, basically. I think my favorite thing that Ryan Macbeth always talks about is that Ukraine war is not about Ukraine and Russia, it's about Taiwan. Because while that war is happening, China is watching how the West reacts and how well are they supporting Ukraine that is one train station away from Poland where they can get resupplies, and how different is it for Taiwan that has a whole ocean between at least America and Taiwan. And so yeah, while it might sound sort of nice, like, oh, maybe there is a deal, like a secret deal that will go after Iran, but it's like, where are you getting it from? And again, it's like, is Trump really going to strike against Iran? He didn't do that in the past. Um, will he really, do you really he see him as, because, taking out Iran, I think is far beyond something a pragmatic person would do. That requires real principles. Actively taking out an evil regime of Iran, you cannot do that accidentally. I don't think that is something you can sort of stumble upon or sort of do just to look good. You really need to recognize why it's a problem for Iran to continue existing. Um, Alejandro, anything to add?
Well, and not only that, apart, I mean, let's see what happens. But I wouldn't be surprised that instead of allowing Israel to at least strike Iran, now that apparently some additional soldiers and rockets will not be predisposed to be used in Gaza, you could attack Iran. But what is the chances that what are the chances that Trump will be putting itself in the middle and avoid any attack against Iran? And I think that the chances are very low because his incentives now are to say, "Hey, I stopped all the violence in the region. I people are scared of me. Here I am. Beware. I'm God Trump." And just the mentioning of me makes the world go into peace.
And
And
that's it. Even with his reckless language, even if he does cause, comparative, quiet for a couple of years, he'll take, and that's it. It's all about me, and how wonderful I am. And Messiah Trump has brought peace, when in fact he's planting the seeds for future terrorism, planting the seeds for future October 7th, and calling it a victory in the meantime. Yeah, what are the odds that, no, what he'll do is he'll restore the maximum pressure campaign. He'll isolate Iran. That means Iran continues.
and I'm very scared about Iran existing. It's not only a threat to Israel, it's a threat to the world. If they are able to get nuclear weapons, very few countries will be safe from that.
No one will be safe from that. It will be an existential threat such as the world has never seen. A country of religion crazed barbarians will have unspeakably powerful weapons to do God knows what. And I'm an atheist with it. At least the atheist communists, held back from nuclear holocaust. Can you imagine Islamists having a nuclear weapon? What would happen? I mean, can you imagine the kind of terrorism that goes on, whether it's Amsterdam or Nice or New York or we'll just this time it'll have a dirty bomb or a nuclear tipped missile to it. That's the difference.
Uh, I'm seeing some reports. Apparently, armed Hamas gunmen are parading through the streets of Gaza, sort of celebrating the ceasefire. I've seen a different post about Palestinians sort of celebrating, which would absolutely make sense.
Yeah, they
Uh,
should be celebrating. They really ought to be celebrating. It's anyone who who thinks that civilization deserves a principled defense, who should be in mourning and should be angry and upset about this as we are. But we are a unique voice. You're not going to find this on the Republican right in America, and certainly not on the left in America. But the position that we take in defense of civilization here is a unique voice, ladies and gentlemen, and it is now all the more urgent that uh, you hear me when I say, please support us if you can. Please, if you think the message that we're delivering, if you think the values that we are offering are important, that this voice is important to be heard, uh, please consider becoming a paid subscriber to the Ayn Rand Center United Kingdom, because you won't get this from nearly any place else, neither from your conservatives nor your progressives or socialists. They are not going to take a position like this, ladies and gentlemen. We're pretty unique in that. And I want to thank everyone who has supported our work over the last 15 months. Um, that only our position has any chance of truly saving civilization and in the long run destroying monsters who would perpetrate something like October 7th.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. She says, thank you so much for this channel. Thank you for your support. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, this is not a show of strength, trumpets. It's a massive weakness. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. You are in a similar way that, when Trump shook the hand of Kim Jong-un, or, talked about how Putin is a great guy. That's not a show of power. Standing up to dictators is a show of power, not shaking their hands. And in a similar way, making a deal with Hamas is no strength, is no, you are surrendering, you are giving up. Again, Hamas is not an equal partner. It's not something it's not your business partner. It's not someone you make a deal to mutual benefit. They are only able to live by force. And by negotiating with them, you are compromising.
A powerful leader, Mr. Trump, a strong, tough talking leader, isn't what the West needs to survive. It needs a principled appreciation for why civilization is a value, for why rights respecting nations are, in principle, better than savage theocracies and dictatorships. And by the way, the survival and safety of civilization shouldn't depend upon a single personality. It should depend upon principled positions you take in opposition to the enemies of civilization, Mr. Trump. But he's wrapped up with the idea, Alejandro again gets it right, he's wrapped up with the idea that it's me, my strength will protect the world. No, it shouldn't depend upon that. We do need strong leaders, but what is a strong leader? A principled leader, Mr. Trump. And it's only by enacting principles that you're really going to protect civilization. It shouldn't have to depend upon, the personality of some strongman leader. How many South American countries have been through this with the promise of strong leadership, when in fact that's the very opposite of what is in their long-term interests?
We also have a super chat from Enric. Thank you so much. He says, terrorists will see this as a success of their propaganda in the West and expanding it. I mean, absolutely. From the start, Hamas needs to rely, as I always say, evil needs the good to live. Evil needs the good to give its power. Evil is incompetent. Evil is unable. It's not, because of how much against reality it is, because of how unreasonable it is, because of how much it is incapable. Just if you need like live examples, look at Russia in Ukraine, or look at any communist or sort of authoritarian regime in the world. It's the most ineffective when it comes to production regimes possible. It's because they are not able to produce. So they need the good. They need both the moral sanction of the good, basically saying to them, no, you do actually, putting people into slavery, which what Hamas is basically doing, sort of getting complete control over the people. No, that is an okay way to conduct a government. That is an okay way to sustain yourself. So they need both this. So they need, they need the UN and they need the UNRWA. They need also the material support. They need the production from the West. They need the production of the good to sustain themselves. And they need the sanction, like from the UN, to sort of have the so-called moral high ground, which in the realm of altruism they do have. They are much closer to whatever altruism stands for than Israel ever will be, because Israel, by defending itself, is selfish. It's saying my life matters more than their life, at least to some extent. But because they don't accept it fully, and they don't call out Hamas for what it is, yeah, that's really what is the fundamental problem at this.
Yeah, my life matters. And guess what? Those who threaten it, those who kill and torture my people are going to get it. Not only don't their lives matter, I'm going to go kill them. for the sake of protecting myself and my children. They've got the upside down, inside out, perverse morality of altruism is the only thing that can explain. Nothing can excuse it. Nothing that can explain this. It's truly suicidal behavior. It's truly the suicide of the West when we hear these very principles coming. And look, it's Donald Trump. The friend. That's what they need. They need the friend of Israel to totally betray the cause of civilization, and that's what they're getting right here.
Someone asked, is James in the USA? It does not sound like it. I don't know what that specifically means, if there is like a specific reverb you're getting from a microphone when you're in the US than when you're in like a different country.
Or the
Uh,
content of what I'm saying. No, I'm an American, born and raised. I'm a believer in the original principles of my country. Believe me. No, I am, however, feeling quite betrayed by the newly elected leader here, at least on this issue, because I just know that the ceasefire deal is going to result in more hostage taking, more atrocities, more murder, more mutilation of women and children. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we have to keep in our minds as we're cutting deals with the perpetrators of it. No, I'm very much American, and I'm just very disappointed right now in the incoming leadership. That's
We have a super chat from Robert. Thank you so much. He says Trump might be slightly less bad than Biden or Harris, but he's the far greater threat because he stands in the way of anyone better. He has destroyed the right by fully, completely taking it over.
Robert. I wish there were that I could say that there were other leaders, but the ones that maybe some of us had the most hopes in, people like Senator Ted Cruz, they've all thrown in with Trump now, or worse. And so I don't see any better thing on the horizon, unfortunately. Even the Republicans are kind of stuck with Trumpism right now. And that in this context, we can see with this concrete how bad what that means in reality. It's very
Yeah,
bad.
in some ways, I always, or sometimes I almost don't like to blame politicians because they are the result of the people who voted for them. So, you might, I'll go to you, Alejandro, in a second. But you might, like you said, for example, with Ted Cruz or any Republican can stand up to Trump, and some of them did, and what they got from it was they are now rhinos. They are now called, you are not actually Republican if you don't support Trump. So it's like, um, it is both sides, basically. Yeah, Trump is destroying the Republican Party, but also Republican Party is allowing itself to get destroyed. It's not doing anything to stop it. But Alejandro, anything to add on that?
Not really, not really. It was a comment
Oh,
that made me laugh. That's it. Mentioning me.
We also have a super chat from Charlie. Thank you so much. He says, are you sure that President Donald J. Trump is not just getting as many hostages out before he unleashes the dogs on Hamas and Iran? I wish, but I, by what standard? That there are sort of like things that are arbitrary. By what standard are you judging that, he would be for something like that? If there was anything like giving me an inkling that something like this could happen, I'd be much more welcome to the idea.
That is how Hamas should be treated. Now, I think that is very, very unlikely. But you're right. If I let my fantasy dream go, mechanism go for a while, aha! What Trump is doing is he's luring Hamas into releasing the hostages so he can betray them and say, aha, all deals are off. But no, 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 no. The way this deal is structured is that the hostages get trickled out a little bit at a time, day after day, and of course, Palestinian terrorists get released by the dozens day after day after day. Okay. And it gives them the sanction. But in my dream of dreams, yeah, and you have a right to lie too. I mean, it wouldn't be any kind of betrayal. It wouldn't be any kind of deception in my mind if we could, deceive Hamas into releasing the hostages and then betray whatever agreement we made with those monsters and destroy them, utterly destroy them, and now fully occupy Gaza. And hey, wait a minute, they'd say, you agreed to, right. But no, the way this is all structured is, we'll get some dead bodies and some hostages little at a time while they make sure that their terrorists get released. And besides, they get the moral sanction in the meantime. So yeah, I don't think that's likely. But if in some kind of wild, improbable fantasy, we've deceived Hamas into releasing hostages, only to turn around and do 10 times worse to them. That would be the only kind of justification for this kind of thing, is to completely deceive and fool and betray the deal we made with Hamas. But no, the way this is structured and the way Mr. Trump talks in general about this, no, I don't. That's not what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of, when it comes to maybe analyzing people or analyzing organizations, analyzing sort of even like countries, you have to look at, behind every action, there has to be like something had to have sort of induced that sort of action. And, sort of Trump doing that, let's say some hostages get released and then he like unleashes the hell on Gaza. Well, that would require some amount of I think principles, basically recognizing that Hamas is truly evil and we can fake them out, we can get the hostages back and then attack them, and also recognizing that Hamas really needs to be destroyed. And I don't think Trump has either of those. And I think him making a deal with Hamas fits more with his personality, with his policies of the past, with everything he did. Again, he is not even principled enough to stand behind his own policies, right? When you look at his remade NAFTA agreement with Canada and Mexico, and now he's talking about tariffing them, and it's like he is against his own policy, right? And doesn't really, you know. We also have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Uh, so
I don't
we,
think
yeah.
Trump thinks the moral principles have anything to do with politics. So we can't expect much. I mean, domestically, if he can cut the budget, but how many Republican presidents have done that? So, I mean, even on the domestic front, this sort of disheartens me about anything that I might have hoped that he would have done for capitalism or freedom, or because I think he does have separate in his mind morality principles over here, politics and the real world over here, the classic pragmatist mentality. And so, no, I don't think we could expect anything like the fantasy dream there. No.
So we are out of time, but we will definitely continue covering specifically even this deal for the upcoming days, especially since when we get more confirmation, when the hostages start getting released, when we'll see how the ceasefire will go through. Not to mention Trump is being inaugurated in just about 5 days next week on Monday. So we'll see also if we'll see some confirmation about if any of the policies will change after he officially does take office.
I hope that we're wrong. I hope that I'll be eating my words, taking back my words, and apologizing to Mr. Trump because he's got some real fight in him, some principle in him, but I doubt it.
But Alejandro, any
Yeah,
last thoughts?
just last words. This is probably one very dark day, one of the darkest since October 7th. But and maybe to end up in a slightly positive note, don't for, don't forget about the values that are being betrayed today: justice, rights, and freedom. And these values are good to be preserved, to be fight for, and also to be uh, angered whenever these are betrayed. Don't forget about those, and don't forget about fighting for them, whatever happens.
Yeah, I mean, over the both today and yesterday, some trolls in the chat were saying we seem upset or we seem, as we are about to cry or something. And, things matter in life, and you should be angry when justice is betrayed. You should be angry when your lives are threatened, because of understanding where those emotions come from. Your emotions come from your beliefs. You have a certain, beliefs in your subconscious. There are certain things you value, and emotions are just the result of, reality coming in and basically saying, "Hey, this is something is happening that is not going according to your values." And you should do something about it. They are no emotions are, as it said, not tools of cognition, but they are still tools of something. They are tools of, something that you value is being threatened. Is something is happening that is wrong here, and
They
you should
motivate
be.
correct emotions motivate correct behavior if your values are correct. If your values are pro-life, then your emotions will be pro-life and they will motivate you to feel and react too when bad things happen so that you're motivated to do something different. What we're talking about here is the perpetuation and indeed the sanction and rewarding of the perpetrators of October 7th and the atrocities there. Of course, we're angry. Of course, we're sad. That is the appropriate affect when the monsters behind October 7th get a big fat reward and a guarantee of survival. I wouldn't respect the psychology, at least, of anyone who would feel differently.
Yeah, I mean, anyone, when I mentioned the story of the man who was happy that his daughter was killed because at least she wasn't kidnapped. I almost choked up. I choked up. I almost cried. And if you don't have any reaction to that, uh, then yeah, you should really think about it. That you should have emotional reactions to your lives being your values being threatened, something really horrific happening, and so with something like this, that's why, I had a hard time even writing notes because it's like really bad. And in many ways, there's almost not much to say, but we still wanted to be on the air because I know many people will feel a similar way, and many people will feel, that there is almost that it's really bad. There's nothing out there, but it's important to know that you know you're not alone, and there are rational voices out there. And as long as they are, and as long as we are right, we are correct on this, and reality in the end wins. The truth in the end wins, and until it happens, we have to fight to the best of our abilities, as all the people did in the past.
Good and evil isn't going to be rewarded or punished on its own. It is up to good people to make sure it happens. If we don't, we don't make it happen, justice won't happen, ladies and gentlemen. Any justice that happens is the result of good people defending, protecting their values. Um, that's what it requires. So please, thank you for all of you who support our work here at Ayn Rand Center UK. And please, if you don't, please consider becoming a paid member at whatever level you're comfortable with, because you are hearing a voice here that you won't hear anywhere else, an anger and a sadness here that you won't hear anywhere else, one that is appropriate to the defense of human life and civilization.
And with that, thank you everybody for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the Reality Show. Until then, thank you and bye bye.